Jay, according to Woj, Celtics center Robert Williams is expected to return in 4 to 6 weeks after undergoing surgery on his left knee. Williams could be back in the lineup as soon as the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. Good news for the C's?
Great news for them. One of the reasons why they're one of the best defensive teams in the NBA is due to Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown being able to pressure on the perimeter, because you have a guy as the landlord behind you and a guy like Robert Williams who can block shots but also alter so many shots throughout the course of a game.
Absolutely. We'll keep it going here, guys, to the Nets, who beat the Pistons, who are 14th in the East by just 7 last night at home, thanks to Kevin Durant dropping 41. Brooklyn could certainly use some help on defense, paging Ben Simmons. Here's Steve Nash on their Achilles heel.
It comes down to how much edge we play with. In Miami, we play with a lot of edge. Against Utah, the best offense in the league, play with a lot of edge. I think when we play with edge, we're a much better team defensively. When we take our foot off the gas a little bit, we're not good enough just to roll out there and shut people down.
JJ Redick also has some concerns about Brooklyn, saying this yesterday right here on First Take. Take a listen.
I'm going to say this. I don't see the Nets, without Ben Simmons healthy, I don't see the Nets winning a playoff series.
With a full-time Kyrie and Kevin Durant, you know this squad very well. You know this area very well. I won't put you on blast. You don't have them winning a playoff series?
Kevin Durant is an all-world player. Kyrie Irving is an all-world player. Those guys can get buckets, but there are real question marks about their defense.
I have so much respect for Kevin Durant as a player. I really can't articulate it more. When I watched him in Tokyo last year after exhausting himself coming off the Achilles and the way he played in Tokyo, my admiration for him, if he can go higher, it goes even higher. So it's very difficult for me to admit that and then also say that he can't do something. But I'm watching this game last night. Detroit is the number 28 offensive team in the league.
Yeah.
Jeremy Grant, who was their leading scorer, he's been out a lot, but he's their leading scorer, is out. And they gave up 123 points in Brooklyn. They just don't have good defensive fundamentals. They didn't have good defensive fundamentals in January. They don't have them in March. I don't think they're going to have them in April. And so, Molly, if this was another year, if this was 2015 or 16, back in those years where the Cavs with LeBron didn't even have to stretch before a game till the conference finals, and the East had some, not so good teams, I would feel like, I could see this. But it's not just the Nets defense that's worrisome. It's the quality of the opposition that they're going to have to beat. And so I'm not necessarily on the same page as JJ. I think it's going to depend on the matchup.
Yeah.
But I just can't get behind believing that they can win 3 playoff series with defending in this manner.
See, Wendy, I don't have the Nets coming out of the East. I can potentially see if they can get to maybe the Eastern semis before it's over because of those defensive woes. But I'm not going to sit up here on national TV and say they're not going to win a playoff series. I'm not doing that. I'm not betting against the most lethal, the most skilled duo the game of basketball has ever seen. Let me just say that. The most skilled duo the game of basketball has ever seen. You're telling me you're going to bet against Kyrie and KD going off for 40 or 50? I think their offensive power can make up for the lack of their defensive abilities to a degree. Doesn't get you over the hump. I'm not betting against them to win a playoff series, though. I think that's erroneous. But I will say, to add to your point, such a different team this year. And it's the personnel for Sean Marks that is a question, right? Last year, we had Landry Shamet, we had Jared Allen, we had Joe Harris, who was healthy. Those are defensive guys. Joe Harris, one of the toughest defensive players there is in the league. He may not have the quickest feet laterally, but he has intention to guard you every possession. Jared Allen can erase a lot of mistakes as the backbone of your defense. Landry Shamet, long, guys like that can be athletic. They can help add to the legs that have to actually carry for KD and Kyrie. But when you talk about, just Detroit, 119 to the Hornets, 132 to the Grizz, 123 to Portland. To Portland, and then 113 to the Mavs. So I think what happens here, we end up not shining the light on the person that has to make this happen. And that's Steve Nash to me.
I thought you were going to say Ben Simmons.
Well, it's going to be, look, obviously you want to have Ben Simmons. That's why you traded for him, but obviously he's not available.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm hearing around the league, Wendy, is that there are a lot of scouts, there are a lot of coaches that don't feel like Steve Nash is great at in-game adjustments. And for me, over the next month and a half, 2 months, I want to see what kind of junk he throws out there. We know your team isn't one of the best defensively, but you still have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And you know how normal people like me are going to look at it and say, you got KD and Kyrie. Like, there are no excuses.
Yeah.
I know you don't have Ben Simmons, but still, now it's time to show us where your coaching is, your second year full-time head coaching. You got the opportunity. Now it's time to show us what's in your bag.
He does have a great staff. And
I agree with you.
Steve Clifford is one of the best tactician coaches. Steve Clifford is a coaching advisor to Steve. I just don't know if you can build habits in April. I mean, this. I sound like an old
But
man.
whose job is that to build habits?
It's the coach's job. I know. I sound like an old man. This is something I would roll my eyes at when I was in my 20s, because I would hear somebody say this and go, okay, just outshoot them. But I've watched the NBA for too long. I've watched these teams who in these situations where you got to get a stop or you got to get 2 stops out of 3 in the end of a playoff game. Because we know there's going to be games where Kyrie does score 47 and Durant does score 36 and they're going to win. I'm talking about when they're playing the Bucks or they're playing the Heat and it's 2-2 and the series is on the line and they can't get stops and they end up losing 136, 132. And then they got to do that again in the next series, and then again in the next series. I just don't know if they have enough. Great skill, but I don't know if they got enough.
How does that all fall on Steve Nash, though, when he just got Kyrie back? That was out of his control, so he hasn't had his guys, and now he doesn't have Ben Simmons.
Well, I never used absolutes. I didn't say it all falls
Yeah.
to Steve Nash. I just said that I'm paying attention now to in-game adjustments on how you defend, what your schemes are like, and how you choose to defend if you go against a Philadelphia with Joel Embiid and James Harden. I don't worry about when the playoffs get here. Players recognize that they can kick it into a different gear. And I know fans may not understand that but you're playing 82 games. It's a lot of games. You know, and we're expecting KD to drop 40 every night. Kyrie's coming back now. I know he has fresh legs. But the level of intensity goes up. I do think that KD and Kyrie and the Nets can match that. But we know about it's the game within 4-minute increments, right? The game within the games that coaches have to manage. And how they manage that will ultimately dictate, especially if you're undermanned, especially if you're not that great defensively, that's where coaching adds a huge advantage to the talent of KD and Kyrie.
Before we move on real quick, you hear him, most skilled duo of all time? You buying that?
I had to pause. When he said that, I paused.
I paused too, but
Tell
I
me
didn't
who's more
want
skilled.
to interrupt the debate, but I'm like, well, making note of,
But you
making
know
note
what?
of that
When
one.
they did the Harden trade, he said this is, how did you say it? You said this is the most fearsome three.
Most fearsome trio the game.
And I kind of, at that time, I kind of went, I don't know about that, Jay. And then I watched him play, and I was like, it's pretty fearsome. So when he says that, I wish I could, Chris Russo this and pound the table and say, name them, but I'm not ready to fight.
Tell me a more skilled duo. I mean, if you want to give me the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen argument, but Scottie still wasn't as lethal
there's
as
almost
KD
been nobody
and
I've
Kyrie.
ever seen as skilled as Kyrie Irving. So you start with that.
Who's the most skilled player in the game today? Would you say Kyrie?
With the ball.
All right. Who's the second most skilled player in the game today?
Kevin Durant's the best shooter I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's
dribbler,
like I said,
passer.
Molly, I wish I had a bazooka to go right back at him. I don't have it, so I guess he may have a point. But
Okay.
I reserve
if
the
you
right.
marinate on it a
I
little
reserve
later,
the right to come
if
first.
you want,
have a
if
good
you
one,
want
have
to
a better
sit
one,
on
come at
it
me,
and just
please.
revisit it,
I
you just want to
reserve the
pause.
right.
I like
wait.
to think about things
in the middle of the
sometimes.
NFL segment to come bursting on set.
Absolutely.
And giving
Stephen
me
A.,
his
go
right.
ahead, tweet. I know you're on
Absolutely
vacation.
do.
I'll wait, though.
I'm
I'll wait
sure
for him,
Steven-
too.
I don't know where he would be on this one. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll find out. All right, we'll keep it going, guys. The LA Clippers, we saw what Paul George still has, scoring 34. In a return from absence, 3 months he's been gone. A comeback versus the Utah Jazz. He hit 5 of 7 shots in the third when he erupted for 20 of his points.